Okay, good morning to all the students.
Good morning, ma'am.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Okay, let's start this 10th lecture under module 5. In the previous session, we have seen how to run on a cluster, packaging the job and running it on a cluster. For that, we have written a map reduce program for an NCDC dataset where we have written the map function and the reduce function separately. And then we created a job object, packed this mapper class and reducer class into the job object, set the input file path and the output file paths, and finally packed everything into a jar file and put it on a cluster so that it can be picked up by any job tracker in order to run the job. Okay, and this we have seen by debugging at a smaller scale or writing unit tests, MR unit tests at a smaller scale using MR unit tool, and then scaling it onto a larger cluster. And then we have seen how to launch a job and understand the map reduce web user interface, how to understand each and every section of what is presented in a web user interface, the job page and each job, how they are displayed, and how many map and reduce tasks are running on a particular job, and what is the progress of this map and reduce. All these can be clearly monitored by using this map reduce web user interface. In today's lecture, we are going to see how to retrieve the results given by the map reduce job and how to debug a job. And in the next class, we'll see about Hadoop logs and remote debugging. Because many students are not present today, let's just postpone the last two topics to the next session. And we'll deal with retrieving the results and debugging a job in today's class. Now, how to retrieve the results? Once the job is finished, once the job execution is completed, then there are various ways to retrieve the results. Each reducer produces one output file. If there is one reducer, there is only one output file. But if there are many reducers used by your MapReduce program, in that case, how many reduce functions are there? Those many output files will be generated. Each reducer produces one output file, and so in that case there are 30 part files named part R000. It is named in this format. And part R, this is like which part of the reduce output. This denotes part of the reduce output, which part it is. This is the first part, and this is the 29th part. Okay, in this weather data set, when the job analyzes this weather data set, there are total 30 reduce functions that ran and gave the output, right? So these have to be finally consolidated with some post-processing of the output. For that, first we need to see how they actually look like in order to do that post-processing. That is what I'm trying to explain you here. So the map outputs from 30 part files, they are represented by these names, identifiers. Part R 00000 for the first map output, and so on for the 29th map output. That is total 30 output files are present in the max temperature directory. This directory we can specify in the output file path. When we are packing the job and creating the jar file, you specify there the input path file and the output path file. There you give the directory as max temp so that all the map outputs will be saved in that particular directory. Now this job produces a very small amount of data when compared to actual real-time processings. This NCDC data, after processing the entire weather data set, it actually gives very small amount of data. Why? Because it captures every year's maximum temperature recorded, that too over only 100 years, right? So though the map input is very large, by the time this map output is processed by the reduce and final output is given, the amount of output will be reduced. And further, if you add a combiner function in the middle between map and reduce, that even reduces the data that is transferred between map and reduce tasks. Okay, so this job produces a very small amount of output, so it is convenient to copy it from HDFS to our development machine. Okay, so the output given by reduce task, we can't keep it on HDFS cluster. We have to copy it onto our local system or development machine. For that, we have to use the get merge option. The hyphen get merge option to the Hadoop file system command is useful here, as it gets all the files in the directory specified in the source pattern and merges them into a single file on the local file system. See, when you have temperatures recorded over 100 years, you can't simply keep them as it is in different reduce files. You have to consolidate them and bring it into a single file. Only then it will be easy for any further processing, right? That is why you have to merge all the reduce outputs data and put it into a single file. For that, you can use this hyphen get merge command. The get merge option to the Hadoop FS command is useful here in order to merge them into a single file on the local file system, on your local machine. So how this output looks like actually, when you give Hadoop FS get merge, this is the command you use to merge all the reduce outputs. For that, that is hyphen get merge, and you are storing it in, you're taking it from the max temp directory and you're storing it onto your local machine in this file. I'm repeating once again, you're using the hyphen get merge command with Hadoop file system, and you're reading it from the max temp directory, that is the file path to which the reduce has written the output to, in different files, in path files. Now that is being merged into a local machine's file, that is max temp local. Okay, now after it is being copied into max temp local, we have to sort it, because the reduce job will give its individual reduce output, right? But those years may not be in sorted order. For that, we are using sort here, sort max temp local. You're using the max temp local file and getting the last 10 records here. Okay, tail will give you the last 10 records, head will give you the first 10 records. In this case, we are using tail, so the last 10 records will be displayed. So we are using sort method in order to sort the years in ascending order and get the individual temperature. Remember, the temperature is the 1/10 of the value. Means if it is 607, it is around 60 degrees centigrade. And if it is 568, it is around 56.8 degrees centigrade. So the temperature recorded here can be taken as 1/10 of the value. So if you have any values greater than 100 degrees Celsius, means values greater than 1000, then we may think it is some abnormal value, or or there may be error in capturing the data. Let us see that further. So here what we understood is we got all the temperature values from various reduce outputs consolidated into a max temp local file on your local system. Okay, that is what is being displayed here. Right from 1991 to 2000, all the maximum temperatures captured in that particular year are displayed here. Now we sorted the output as the reduce output partitions are unordered, as I said. And doing a bit of post-processing of data from MapReduce is very common, as is feeding it into analysis tools such as R, a spreadsheet, or even a relational database. So when you get the reduce outputs, you can use any of these tools in order to sort the data or perform some post-processing of the reduce outputs that are merged into a particular file on your local system. Now, another way of retrieving the output, if it is small, is to use the cat function, hyphen cat function option to print the output files to the console. For that, we are using again Hadoop file system, use -cat command and use the maxtemp directory. In that directory, you are trying to print all the values, all the output files under that particular directory. Now on closer inspection, when we go through the output, we see that some of the results don't look reasonable, right? For instance, the maximum temperature for 1951, which is not shown in the output, is 590 degrees, right? How do we find out what is causing this? Is it corrupt input data or a bug in the program? Say if you have very high temperatures recorded, is it really a valid temperature or it is a bug due to some erroneous capturing of the data? How do we understand that? For that, we need to perform debugging of the job. For this debugging, normally how do we perform this debugging? By just giving a print statement, right? Giving a print statement via the standard output, we can notice whether the output is according to expected value or not. That can be done even with Hadoop. But remember, we are not working on a single machine. We are working on multiple machines on multiple clusters in order to process the data. Now, when we are doing this processing of data on multiple machines, and if you want to debug a particular program or a particular statement by using a print, it is very difficult. The task will become more complex. Why? Because the data is split across various nodes on the cluster. So the debugging will be a difficult task. So how to handle this? We can use a debug statement to log to standard error in conjunction with a message to update the task status message to prompt us to look in the error log. So we can use a debug statement to log it, to record it to a standard error class, to a standard error method. In conjunction with the message, we can also give a message to update the task status message so that we can say it is not according to the required format or the data that is captured is not according to the norms. Like that, you can print some status message, task status message to prompt us to look into the error log to see what actually is the problem. Now, the web interface makes it much easier to do this. And we can also create a custom counter to count the total number of records with unreasonable temperatures in the whole data set. We can also create a counter whenever it encounters erroneous data or some extreme values for that particular data rather than what is expected. In that case, that custom counter can be incremented so that we'll know how many of the values are actually extreme values or erroneous values. For that, we can create a custom counter to count the total number of records with unreasonable temperatures in the whole data set, with erroneous recording of the temperature in the whole data set. Now, this gives us valuable information about how to deal with the condition of erroneous data. Now, we add a debugging to the mapper as opposed to the reducer, as we want to find out what source data is causing the anomalous output. It is not that we have to add this debugging on the reduce task, because map will already process the data and give the output as input to the reduce phase only for further sorting or merging or consolidation, right? So the actual processing is done on the map side itself. That is why we add a debugging to the mapper, not to the reducer, as we want to find out what source data is actually causing this anomalous output. For that, we can write a program like this. We can use this public class max temperature mapper. We initially wrote this for the mapper function. You remember, I hope you remember this. Public class max temperature mapper. Now it is extending the mapper superclass, this you know, and the template, it is taking key value pair as input and giving key value pair as output. Long writable and text is the input split, which has the file offset and the entire input split from which the year and the A temperature have to be extracted, right? You remember that? For that, it is taking long writable and text. and this is for input, and this key value pair is for the output. This output will give again in the form of text the year and int writable list of temperatures recorded in that particular year across the globe. Okay, further that is given to reduce phase, and that finds out the maximum temperature in that particular year. So we are actually trying to debug the job at the map level itself, not going to the reduce level. Any doubt? Okay, so we are debugging the job on the at the map level itself before going to the reduce level, because we need to find out the anomalous data that is captured. For this part is important. Remember, we are creating a counter here. Whenever there is data that is exceeding 100 degrees Celsius, in that case, we need to increment a counter. That counter we are creating at this stage. For that, we are using enum temperature. The temperature is an enumerated data type, and it has only one element, that is over 100. This over 100, initially it has the value 0. You know that enum value starts with 0, right? Enum elements value starts with 0. For that, we are using over 100 variable in order to start the count with 0. Now, you use a parser variable, private NCDC record parser. You create a new instance of this NCDC record parser, which helps us to parse through the NCDC records or the input splits. Okay, so for that we are creating a parser object, and now you create a map function, public void map function, which takes the key value pair as input and packs the output into a context object. This also we have seen in our previous sessions. This map function takes the key value pair as input, that is the the input split containing the file offset and the entire text that is associated with that file offset, and then whatever data is obtained by processing that input split can be packed into a context object in the form of again key value pair as text and int writable. That is, this part is being packed into this context object. Okay, now as usual this throws IO exception and interrupted exception which can be caught. And then see the next line, parser dot parse value. This value is taken from the input split. Okay, so this entire input split is parsed using the parser object. Now, if parser dot is valid temperature, you can use the is valid temperature method in order to find out whether it is a valid input or not. For that, you are using parser dot is valid temperature method. Okay. Now, what you're doing in this method, you're taking the parser dot get a temperature. When you're getting this a temperature, when you're extracting this a temperature into the parser object, store that into air temperature variable. Okay. Now, if the air temperature is greater than 1000, I'm repeating here again that the temperature values are 1/10 of this original values. So the original value, if it is 1000, the temperature value will be 100 degrees centigrade. Now, any values greater than 100 degrees centigrade can be treated as some extreme values, right? So you need to debug your job so that it will identify the air temperatures which are greater than 100 degrees centigrade. For that, you are using here greater than 1000. Remember, do not get confused that this 1000 is not the exact air temperature. It is 1/10 of the value. Okay, the original temperatures are 1/10 of this value. That is why we are checking the air temperature values with greater than 1000. Okay, that is, you're checking whether the air temperature values are greater than 100 degrees Celsius. Now, if a temperature is greater than 1000, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to log, system error dot println. System error, you're trying to log it to the system error class. What you're trying to log, temperature over 100 degrees. For input, you give the value here that is parsed. This value. okay, which indicates that that particular A temperature is greater than 100 degrees. Okay, system error println, you are trying to give a message temperature over 100 degrees for input, the input that is used. Now next line has context dot set status. This will help us to write a message, meaningful message to the context object, which will help the client to understand what exactly is the status. So you're writing that as context dot set status detected possibly corrupt record, see the logs. So it is prompting the client to see the logs in order to identify what type of error has arisen. Is it due to erroneously captured data or something else? In order to find out that, we are giving it through set status. Okay, context dot set status detected possibly corrupt record. Just go through the logs. Now context dot get counter, because an erroneous record is encountered, increment the counter. For that you are using context dot get counter temperature dot, here you are using this enum name, temperature dot, what is the variable that you are using? Over 100. So this value is nothing but 0 initially. Now this is incremented by 1. Overall, what do we mean here is, if at all an erroneous data greater than 100 degrees Celsius is captured, is encountered by the map task, then it will immediately increment this temperature over 100 counter in order to indicate that these are the number of erroneous files it has come across. Okay, that is the meaning for this. Now finally, write the data to the context object, that is the output key value pair, the year in which the temperature is recorded, and the and all the temperatures, list of all the temperatures recorded in that particular year. That will be written to a context object and passed on to the reduce method, which will further sort it, merge it, and consolidate the result and give the output as part files, which is further merged into a single file on a local machine by some post-processing task. Now, how to understand the tasks that are being performed, how the tasks are progressing. For that, we use the tasks page. The job page has a number of links for viewing the tasks in a job in more detail. Initially, in the web UI, we have seen the job tracker page and the job page. When you click on the job ID in a job tracker page, you come across the job page where you have various details about the map and reduce tasks and their progression. Now the job page has a number of links for viewing the tasks in a job in more detail. For example, by clicking on the map link, if you click on that particular map link, you are brought to a page that lists information for all of the map tasks on one page. Now you can also see just the completed tasks. So what are the tasks that are completed? How much time it has taken to complete that particular task? What is the status? Did it log any error message, or the completion, the task is successful? All this information can be obtained from the task page. Now you can see here the screenshot of the task page where you have details of all the completed tasks. So this first column will give you the task identifier and what is the status of that particular task in the second column. That is, the task is completed or an error has been encountered, all these will be given. Even it gives us the start time of the task and finish time of the task. And if any errors are encountered, that will be displayed here, and along with the counters. This counters has how many bytes are read, how many bytes are output, how many bytes are processed, and how many map tasks worked on this, how many reduce tasks worked on this, what are the split records. Split records means how many files are written to the disk. This helps us to optimize the disk utilization. All this counters information will be available in this counters column. And see this status column. This status column will give us that the task is initializing when the task has started execution. So when this particular task started to execute, it will give initializing. Then the status will turn to input files path, from which input file the data is being read by the task. That will be given after initialization. And once the data is read, then it will actually give you what is the status, current status of that particular task. If there is any error log that is written, if any error message is written to the log, then even that information can be found at the status. See, in this case, in the second task case, you can see detected possibly corrupt record. See the log. So it is prompting the user. This we have programmed in your previous coding part in today's class. You saw that, right? It is giving set status. The context object set status is given as detected possibly corrupt record. See the logs. So when you go through the logs, you will understand whether the input split is having an erroneous data or some other error has happened. What is the root cause for that error can be understood by seeing the logs. Okay, this is how we need to understand the tasks page. Now let us move on to task details page. Now when you click on any particular task, this ID, then you will move on to this task details page. Now from the task page, you can click on any task to get more information about it. Okay, so in this case, you are getting the details about a particular task, the task attempts, how many task attempts have happened, and on which machine the task has run, on which node that particular task has been run. That information will be given in the second column, and the status of the task, whether it is succeeded or whether it is pending or whether some error has occurred or whether the task has been killed. All this information can be seen by referring to this status column. And what is the progress of this particular task and the start time and the end time of this task. And you can also have the access to task logs here. This task logs will help us to go through the log details and see what actually is the error that has arisen. As I said, whether it is due to erroneous data or whether it is due to other anomalies, all this can be understood by referring to this task logs. And the task counters here, it has been increased. Why? Because we are using an extra counter in order to count the number of erroneous records that are encountered. For that, here the count number has increased to 11. And also you have input split locations, where exactly the input splits are being read from. That details also will be given. And if you want to go back to the job from this particular task details page, that can be done. And if you want to go back to the first page, more before than this job page, that is the job tracker page, that can be back. You can go back by using this link. Go back to the job takes you to the job page. Go back to job tracker will take you to the job trackers page. Okay, in the next session, we'll complete this module by going through the topics on Hadoop logs and remote debugging. Any doubts in today's class? Am I able to convey the concept clearly to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you have any doubts, just go through again and again. You will understand. Only this fourth and fifth modules have a lot of programming part. But still, if you go through each and every line and understand the concept, it will be easy for you to write in the exam. Do not try to by heart the code. You have to go through each and every part of the code and understand that so that you can write it on your own. Tomorrow's class will be taken by Nagbhushan sir, second hour. And Saturday, I'll be back and finish the module. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Shall we end the class? Okay, see you in the next class.
Bye, ma'am.